feels like it's been a while since Goblin's been making a true splash on the scene. Like, back when he was like 16, 17, we really thought like, oh my god, this guy's actually doing really damn well. Like, he was getting top 16, then top 8 WCS kind of thing. And I just wonder what his mindset is, what his motivation is currently, because I think when I watch him play, micro-wise, fundamentally, very, very solid. But this group is very hard. You need to be so damn good at PvP to get through this one.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. PvP is also a really tough matchup to be good at, right? I think that's actually what also makes ShoWTimE so impressive, is that I won't say it's 100% of the time, but oftentimes you look at ShoWTimE, you kind of look at his PvP, it is one of the most impressive PvPs because he has consistency in it. And that is an incredibly difficult thing to achieve. I mean, just again, like, look at his current group standing in a group with 6 other Protoss players. That's what's really difficult to actually pull off, not dropping maps. So I think it's a very big ask for Goblin to do really well in this kind of group, but it's kind of what Zombie Girl was saying. It's do or die moments now. He's down 1-3 in the group. If he goes down 1-4, it is extremely unlikely, if not impossible, to advance out after that. I don't know 100% if it's still possible for him to advance out with some weird math. Basically, if you go down 1-4, you are 100% relying on some other random things outside of your control going well.
Definitely, definitely. And just to speak a little bit about ShoWTimE in this group, with the amount of Protosses, kind of the point to back up what you were saying. Like, this matchup, I've seen so many people try and edge out ShoWTimE in so many different ways, be it like all-inning him, outgreeding him, you name it. And he just plays very solid and just ends up the victor regardless, which that just is, it's almost the old Serral testament where people try absolutely everything against him. It just plays very by the book and just outplays them. And it's super impressive that he's able to do that. This game got a nice early scout off on his opponent. Goblin went for a bit of a later scout. And that's maybe a little bit of a corner that Goblin was trying to buy there, a few resource-wise. But yeah, here, just the little trades so far have gone ShoWTimE's way.
Definitely going to be a nice start for him. And given that it is pretty much mirrored on both sides with double Stalker into double Sentry with a Nexus for both these players, it is going to be a good feeling, I'm sure, for ShoWTimE. We even got the Twilight Councils popping down at roughly the same time. Safety shield batteries coming out at the natural. I mean, everything really is just mirrored. But you already see even just small little differences. ShoWTimE is a little bit ahead of supply. He already has like a couple more workers. He's getting out his next Stalker a little faster. All these little things do start to add up.
Certainly do, certainly do. And when you're playing this kind of game, I think this actually speaks a lot to Goblin as a player, that he's doing like one of the most standard and safe openings that you can, which, you know, ShoWTimE's doing it as well, but that's very confident by him. And I have seen him, especially with his Stalker micro, it's actually pretty damn good. And if he was to win games against ShoWTimE, trying to do it in a ShoWTimE-esque style, no weird shenanigans about it, just, hey, I'm going to outplay you and play straight up. I think that's super cool from him. And here you see the scouting going off from both of them about the same time with hallucinations. They're both going to know what they're up against. Maybe, actually doesn't get to keep it alive. You see a Twilight. That's a big deal.
Yeah, gonna be a little unfortunate. He doesn't get the full scout over there. Maybe can try and make some inferences later on with some of the later hallucinations on, you know, unit composition and stuff that's coming on out. Take some estimated guesses here. But Adepts over here for ShoWTimE, gonna shade forward and get a good count on that number of Stalkers and everything. So I think that ShoWTimE should have a pretty decent idea of what's going on. And this other Phoenix does come in, spots out the Twilight Council that's chrono boosting Blink. I think both these players are in the know.
Oh, yeah, definitely, definitely. It was actually kind of fortunate for Goblin there. Because his first hallucination didn't scout anything, he sent out a second one pretty early on. Oh my god, ShoWTimE. So he gets to scout that proxy. But what I was saying about the hallucination, he scouted the Adepts as they were there, so it didn't catch him off guard whatsoever. This is nice by Goblin, though. Little grab on these Adepts. Just one Adept is way less scary than two. Obviously, the one-shot potential is gone, but ShoWTimE stopped that proxy before it even began there.
Yeah, definitely little trades on both sides, right? Exactly what you were saying. Picking off the proxy, nice find for ShoWTimE. Picking off the Adepts, nice find for Goblin. And both these players looking to grab their third base. I mean, in essence, there has been almost no real losses on the other side, right? It's like a pylon and canceling the proxy gate, picking off two Adepts. But for the most part, it's just been a pretty passive game with lots of pokes and scouting information. And both players just okay with going into a macro game on pretty much the same way. But I think what's cool now is that we're finally starting to see some deviations. Little deviations, not major ones, but just the timing of Goblin getting up charge and his Forge and his Robo a little bit faster than ShoWTimE.
Also, I've just been looking at this probe count. Like, they've both been on 2 Nexus, both producing their third at pretty much exactly the same time. I mean, there's a few seconds in it, but ShoWTimE's already accumulated quite a bit of a lead there. So probably spending a few more chrono boosts on the probes rather than the charge and maybe the +1 now that Goblin's going to be doing. And ShoWTimE just kind of naturally got himself a little bit of a supply lead. So if Goblin wants to make something happen, maybe he can do with his timing. Like having charge against no charge, but fighting into shield batteries and stuff, that's always pretty difficult.
Yeah, it definitely can be, but Goblin's going to see what he can get done with it regardless. The Immortal is definitely going to complicate things a little bit. You have to be a bit more on point with all that micro, but like you were saying, I think micro is definitely one of Goblin's strong suits. Might end up losing a Stalker over here. No, barely keeps it alive. Nicely done.
Nicely done indeed, and behind this, it's not an all-in by him by any means. You know, this is almost a bit of aggression, a bit of poking, just to find out what's going on, see your opponent's army, and also setting up a third behind it. And he got a Stalker for his troubles, got to get away. Not bad by Goblin.
Yeah. Here come the big gateway floods for Goblin, though, and I think, yeah, I was waiting to see when exactly ShoWTimE was going to start up charge, because there is like this weird potential that the Protoss player who doesn't go for charge quite as early can stick around on Stalker Immortal for a little bit longer and try and make a faster transition out into some of the other later game units. But I do like that, yeah, ShoWTimE's still going to get up charge nice on time. He's going to start up his robotic speed a little bit earlier, whereas Goblin is going to be mixing the Dark Shrine. And that's not just for the idea of doing DT harassment. It's also going to be useful at just making the Archons, which are actually a pretty important factor in dealing with your opponent's zealots.
They certainly are, and ShoWTimE scouted it immediately, and you can see the difference in tech choices here. Like Goblin, he's going to be wanting to go for that brute force army, whereas ShoWTimE, he's actually taking up to disruptors with his second Robo and what have you. And it looks like he is preparing for an attack, which that's exactly what's coming, but this is the time that Goblin needs if he wants to make anything happen right before disruptors come out.
He's only got about like 15-20 seconds before those disruptors make their way to the front lines as they're about to pop out right now. Observer for ShoWTimE. Oh god, I love that. He spots out the army and also pulls the Observer back, but Charge Loss come charging on forward. Stalkers blink forward very aggressively here for Goblin, but a large part of his army is actually locked out. The shield battery overcharge also greatly helping ShoWTimE. ShoWTimE aggressively blinks forward, picks off a few more units. He's gonna get force fielded in, but the disruptor is here. It doesn't connect though. Can Goblin actually start to overpower his opponents?
That is the question. These disruptors aren't getting much done so far. That chunky boy Immortal took up a lot of shots on the front line, and where are the warpins from Goblin? They are coming. More Zealots joining the fight here, and they are doing a good damage of tanking and really dealing damage to this army. So far, these disruptors haven't been that useful at all.
Yeah, I mean, they've barely maybe scratched a couple of these Zealots out of the fight, but another one of the disruptor shots not really accomplishing a whole lot more. More charge line reinforcements start coming on forward. The shield battery is out of energy. The shield battery overcharge should be coming off of cooldown relatively shortly, so that's something that ShoWTimE can fall back to. But man, ShoWTimE would really love to be able to just push this back a little bit further and snipe off that War Prism or push it back, but he is definitely having some trouble with that. This disruptor shot, cleaning up some of the zealots, is a really, really big deal because that does give him the ability to actually start pushing this a lot further back now.
Ravi, the third base. Look,
oh Lord.
Goblin took out the cannon. Now he's taking out all those probes for free. ShoWTimE just realizes it right now. And that is a huge amount of damage. Without that, I think Goblin would have been dead actually to any sort of counterattack, but now he's actually got himself a bit of a worker lead. Oh, sick blink.
Nice body blocking there. Disruptor is all getting caught by the Stalkers. One or two of the disruptor shots do go off, but only finding a handful of the Stalkers. Finds a few more with that final disruptor there. And I think this is like a really scary moment now for Goblin, though. He has a good worker lead that he was able to garner for taking out all those pros at the third base, but his army supply is so paltry. It's 31 to 42, and frankly, ShoWTimE's army supply is better. He still has disruptors in it. He has an Immortal in it.
Yeah, and ShoWTimE's the one actually adding on probes again. I mean, he did lose quite a few. He is behind in upgrades. We've got to remember that. 2-0 versus 1-0, but he has all that tech available. Granted, Goblin did just reset the disruptor count, which was great. ShoWTimE hasn't remade a cannon at that third, but he has a small group of units there as well. Oh, I mean, Goblin needs to make this work, whether it's now or in a minute or two. Whereas ShoWTimE, look, he's now found out that it's still going, so no, he can't take a fourth with this. Now he knows he has to respect this.
Yeah, and at this point, since ShoWTimE is the one who has been making workers, like you were pointing out, Goblin hasn't. ShoWTimE's already actually caught up in workers, so Goblin got to do a little bit more damage with this Warp Prism in the main base. The Warp Prism going to get focus fire down by the Stalkers, not able to pick it off, but the DTs are not able to get too much damage done, and Goblin also forced to retreat on the front lines. But at the third base, Goblin is actually hitting in 3 different locations at once, and ShoWTimE struggling to keep up right now, loses another 9 workers, and Goblin takes a minor worker lead yet again.
This is good by Goblin. I don't want him to get super carried away with this. Nice pick up on the Immortal. These disruptors who are a bit too far away. The Warp Prism's getting taken down in the main base by ShoWTimE, which buys him time, not surprisingly. And Goblin, behind all this, he didn't get a 4th Nexus setup or anything like that. He was so all in, but he's done well with what he had, because killing 28 probes ain't ShoWTimE. That's a hard thing to do.
I think the one thing I'm worried about is that, well, Goblin, he is taking some really nice trades here and there, but I don't really see like a big transition point for him. Okay, now that he's taking a 4th, I do feel a little bit better about it, and he's getting a +3 attack. That's definitely going to be nice, but I feel like the longer he waits, if he's not also continuing to reset the disruptor count, there is this scary moment where ShoWTimE finally just says, enough is enough, and he also still has as good of an economy as Goblin, despite all the damage, and just decides to go for it. And oh god, that blink forward was very aggressive. He trades out a few Stalkers for it.
Look at the supply, though. Like, look how much Goblin has ready to attack from multiple angles here. There's 23 Zealots with +2 on the map right now. And Goblin kind of sees everything. He's got this big wraparound. He's getting ready to run in the natural as well at the same time. I'm kind of scared for ShoWTimE here. He can't take this too lightly.
Yeah, he has to be extremely careful about it. He is reliant on these disruptors finding something, even if it's just to push the Stalkers back for a little bit so that the Zealots start getting picked off or things along those lines. He needs those disruptors to play an important role in these fights. And charge lots charge on forward as we end up seeing Goblin actually running by with a lot of charge lots into the main base. It's going to be a huge pain in the butt to clean up. Disruptors barely missing their mark on the Stalkers. There's a nice blink out there from Goblin, and Goblin, he is doing a fantastic job with this multi-pronged harassment still.
Oh, I tell you what, though, ShoWTimE, like, this is a hard army to manage here, but he's doing a decent job of just not falling apart just yet. Big disruptor shots, kind of killed himself there a little bit, but did grab quite a few of those Stalkers, which he needed at that point. ShoWTimE getting some warp ins, another disruptor connects very, very lightly. Goblin still behind the supply, but it doesn't feel that way if you're ShoWTimE. ShoWTimE warping in, or rather, Nexus recalling a few extra reinforcements here, just mustering anything that he can.
Yeah, just the very few units that he had left over in the main base. Some of his production actually got depowered from those charge lots, so one of the robos depowered means fewer disruptors being produced at a time, and he has definitely been reliant on those disruptors getting some connections again. So now it gets really scary here unless he can actually make use of the disruptors he already has. That's one disruptor shot already out of the picture. The Stalkers blink forward, going after the remaining disruptors. That's all the disruptor shots out of the picture for now.
That is actually crazy by Goblin, but it might just work. Shield battery overcharge is super good, but he takes it out. A nice blink on top and going to take out the cannon as well before it gets going. Disrupt shot goes off, but no, takes out his own Zealot and yet again here. And wow, Gobbers with the 1-0 here. What crazy world am I living in? Because I did not anticipate that whatsoever.
The second map Goblin has ever taken off of ShoWTimE in competitive series. Really, really impressively done. Also very fun. I think ShoWTimE was right to tap out there. He didn't really have a whole lot, but it is funny. ShoWTimE tapping out when he was 10 supply up over Goblin. But it just goes to show that ShoWTimE did have a still killer economy, but just his army units were not there. Goblin was able to really capitalize on fantastic trades despite going up against disruptors and not really having as ideal of a composition. He just continuously found these positional advantages over and over and over again. I'm so impressed with how well Goblin was playing that.
He played it really well. Like his build order choice and such at the start was very nice. I like the fact that he just decided he's going to go toe-to-toe. And then he was like, all right, I have this timing window with what I have. And it was right as disruptors started being made. And I was like, this is going to be very problematic because I think ShoWTimE set up very nicely defensively. And what ShoWTimE tried to do there was when the Zealots charged in, he put all the force fields down, thinking he trapped them in. But then Goblin just was like, oh, I'm going to blink over the force fields, completely surround you with my very, very bruiser brawly army. And I think that caught ShoWTimE very off guard, the fact that his force fields were so bypassed there. Just very nicely handled by Goblin, and it wasn't all in, and it had to work. But the thing is, he made it work. That DT play as well in multiple locations, just very nicely done.
Yeah, the DTs, like you said, really bringing Goblin back in that game, because if he had not killed all of the workers basically sitting at that third base earlier on in that game, that really, really would have snowballed in a very different direction. So Goblin doing a great job with that. And I think credit to you, Ben, you were talking about how Goblin, one of his biggest strengths was in the micro, in those trades and everything. He did a phenomenal job of that, really leveraging those blink stalkers, really leveraging the positioning and everything. I'm amped up for game number 2 now, Ben. I am so amped up for this.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's nice to see the underdog take the victory in such a decisive way. And spawning over in the top left, representing big, it is ShoWTimE.
And in the bottom right, the blue Protoss player, proudly representing Team Roddy today, sitting up 1-0. He is Goblin.
I always get a little worried for the underdog when they take the first map, because it's like, gave everybody hope, you know? And it's like, sometimes you give yourself hope as well. And it's like, obviously you can carry through the momentum and whatever, but it can also be like, oh no, it's slipping away if things start going wrong from that point on. But no, that was very nicely done by Goblin. Like, that was a tough situation to get himself out of. I think ShoWTimE, it felt very often that he didn't realize how committed Goblin was. Like, he was trying to take a fourth, he was continually making the probes and stuff. I'm even maybe thinking that maybe making some different units out of those robos would have probably been better against this mash charge lot style, because it felt like the disruptors never really got to get the connections that they were after.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting point. I do wonder, because ShoWTimE never had his entire army really getting cleaned up, it was just large chunks of the frontline units and maybe some of the disruptors getting blunk on. I actually really wonder if Colossus would have been helpful in that situation.
I was doing the same thing. I was like, I know Colossus are very vulnerable, like even whipping out Immortals just for extra meat and stuff, meaning that the Stalkers have to get on top of it and what have you. But yeah, the Disruptors, it just became very hard to manage them. There was like once or twice where Goblin caught a few out as well. But yeah, Goblin's army was so fluid and mobile. It like just pure Stalker Zealot. It wasn't like just pure Stalker. It was this whole flooding situation. And you could see him set up attacks where he wanted them to be in the future. I just thoroughly enjoyed his play there.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's not forget that the beginning of that last game was very passive in a lot of ways for both sides, where they were continuously keeping an eye on each other. They were making sure that everything was okay. Like, they were ready to go for some minor harassment or aggression with like the proxy gate from Goblin, the depths from ShoWTimE. But overall, we got to 3 bases for both players and up to charge and up to like their robo and everything else, barely losing under like 500 resources for either side. So one of the big questions on my mind is, what does game 2 look like in that regard? Are they going to be as out of each other's faces as game number 1?
We will see. We will see. So far, first blood drawn by ShoWTimE here, taking out the initial scout probe. Another scout probe on the map for Goblin. Goblin kind of waiting at the top of this ramp, and ooh, that's a nice start. If he can keep this up, if he can get that first Stalker, I tell you what, this ain't looking so hot for ShoWTimE. ShoWTimE just get the scout on the next 2 Stalkers, so he knows that it is 4. Now he can get a shield battery prepared at his natural and whatever. And he did actually see that probe move out on the map. He might have a very good idea that Goblin's going to be super aggressive here.
Yeah, I mean, he also saw, I think as the probe was dying, not only did he see Stalker 3 and 4, he also saw Gateway starting up immediately with another couple of units. So he could infer there's a possibility there is going to be 5th and 6th Stalkers coming along as well, which would definitely be a very aggressive choice. Now, 3 Stalkers and 2 Sentries with a shield battery, it's definitely holdable, but it is one of those tricky situations where you need to make sure you have enough shield battery energy to continue holding as the aggression continues to ramp up.
And this is okay. This is the kind of crazy play that I was expecting from Goblin. You know, like we saw Drogo pull this out against Max a few times with a 4-gate situation. But yeah, this is what I wanted from him, because you said it in the first game. He realized what his strength was, which was his Stalker micro, and here he's just doing it, but in such an extreme way. ShoWTimE wants to get a scout up to see what's happening behind this, because so far Goblin's done a good job of just revealing 4 Stalkers. Not revealing the blink yet either, or anything like that. ShoWTimE has no idea what's happening behind this.
This is going to be a big problem. ShoWTimE is about to have an immortal pop on Al, but it's still not here. Goblin, when is he going to... Okay, he's waiting for blink, but if he actually waits around too long for blink right now, it's still a little bit of a ways from finishing. He really wants to go start picking off some of these units. I think that's going to be a good call. Shield battery already out of energy, but ShoWTimE is starting up more shield batteries. I love that decision right now. It's going to be so important, and be able to shield battery overcharge one of the further back shield batteries.
Oh, that was the first little error from Goblin there. Did lose a Stalker despite having blink. He just wanted to make sure that Immortal didn't have his barrier for next time, because we might see him just go for it. And so far, the micro actually... Okay, there we go. There's the Goblin micro I like to see. Just making sure that these Stalkers aren't falling, but ShoWTimE, his army just got twice as powerful, basically, with a second Immortal joining the fight, and he's being so patient with his Sentry energy. But Goblin, he's microing very well here with the Stalkers. Oh, just managed to lose another one there. Every fight that happens here, even though the shield battery energy is getting drained by ShoWTimE, the big units are coming out. That Warp Prism is going to be a big deal.
Yeah, not only the Warp Prism, but shield battery overcharge is still available, which is something I think Goblin knows he has to respect. So he can't just go for the hyper-aggressive blink. There's the shield battery overcharge, and Goblin has to back off for now. But that buys time, for like you said, now the Warp Prism shows up. So ShoWTimE has blink of his own in a sense, and that is going to definitely complicate things. Is Goblin going to go for the blink into the main base? Is ShoWTimE going to be prepared for this? Right now, all of his attention at that natural. He has no idea about this, and he is going to get blunk on up into the main.
Poor little Jim the Stalker on that ledge alone. You know, that is not a happy place for him to be, but he's kind of getting away with it. ShoWTimE has to be so careful. There was one sentry in the mix as well. So I wonder, I mean, it's being used for the hallucination, obviously, here, but I was thinking maybe he's going to try and trap him in one base or the other, but ShoWTimE's army is getting so good now that even with just a portion of his army, maybe he can deal with what Goblin has, and oh my goodness, this is not going to be the fight that Goblin wants to take.
Yeah, Goblin's going to try and go for the blink to the main, but this is truly an all-in. You have to remember, everyone, this is a one base all-in with 23 workers for Goblin. He has to end the game with this, and it's looking more and more like the best case scenario is going to be Goblin trading versus this, and that won't actually be enough anymore. ShoWTimE has had this two-base economy going for a while.
And 3 chunky boys are chasing down Goblin right now. Remember, ShoWTimE sees exactly what's going off as well. This observer sees absolutely everything. Goblin can't do a thing about it either. And ShoWTimE, every second that goes on, it's just a good second for him. That is not a situation that you want to be in if you're Goblin. And ShoWTimE feeling confident enough to get out some adepts on the map, and I think that's a great choice.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. Even just forcing a few units to be warped in back at home for Goblin is going to be extremely annoying, given that he was entirely all in and just wants to make this attack happen. A sentry also gets warped in there for Goblin again to just try and get another hallucination up. So we end up seeing there's the big blink up into the main base, going after the pylon, now trying to get the Warp Prism, isn't quite able to get it, but no, the shield battery helps keep the Warp Prism alive, and things are just not going well for Goblin so far.
They aren't. That Warp Prism was a bit scary, by the way, and units even kind of moving up the ramp for Goblin here, and look at his supply, just absolutely sliced in half, and GG is called. I mean, that was nicely handled by ShoWTimE. For a moment there, it looked like it could be kind of scary, but I liked all his scouting. Like, it was, even though he lost one of his first Stalkers, which was like, oh dear, he got a second probe into the main. He got the second probe, like that second probe that he had on the map, it was like, okay, I've seen a probe move out from you and I've already killed one. That's like, okay, what are you doing with that, cheeky mate? And then he's like, okay, I see the next 2 sets of Stalkers as well. And it's like, okay, so you got a lot of Stalkers already out. You've also got a probe on the map kind of thing. He knew what he was up against. He got ready for it. Just very good scouting and decision-making by ShoWTimE.
Really, really fantastically done. I 100% echo that same sentiment. I think a lot of that game, the later half, like the later 50% of that game, I think just starts becoming more and more one-sided. You were talking about the power of those immortals. It's just more and more difficult for Goblin in that situation to actually trade out better and better. And the impressive part is ShoWTimE surviving the first half of that game, thanks to, like you said, the scouting to identify what's going on, then also being able to make the decisions based on that scouting, like throwing down those extra shield batteries a little bit further back, the extra little bits of micro he's able to do despite not having blink to keep those units alive. I mean, all of those things were key for him being able to survive through that tense period. And after that, it just gets easier and easier for him. So hopefully Goblin can shake off, the later half of that game and think like, okay, I was up 1-0. I gave it a shot with this kind of aggressive build. Like, let's go game number 3. Like, we got another shot at this.
Yeah, I don't think that was a bad map to do it on. Like, a lot of the maps have ramps now. For example, Curious Minds that we're going into as well, which makes those kind of builds a bit trickier to do. Maybe it's easier to switch around to jump into the main and stuff, but still, Berlingrad, very nice for attempting it. And hey, why not? You're 1-0 up. If you get the cheeky 2-0, that'd be amazing. Anyhow, spawning over in the bottom right as our blue Protoss on Curious Minds, it is Goblin.
And up here in the top left, the red Protoss player from Berlin International Gaming. He is ShoWTimE.
I hope Goblin keeps it together, because so far his gameplay has been pretty damn solid, Like that, what he did in game 1, actually pretty damn hard to do. And not only to do, to get away with it all. Like, just some of the little clutch decision makings that he did, such as like the DTs and the third base and what have you. But this game, Curious Minds, this is one that Protosses don't super often get to play, actually, just because it doesn't work out that well against Zerg and what have you. So very much looking forward to see what both of the players pull out here and think is the best thing to do as well.
Yeah, this is I forget if this is the second least picked map according to that map pool thing that Zombie Grub was covering during the intro of the show. But this is definitely one of the least picked maps in the map pool right now for tournament play. So yeah, should be fun to see how things go. I'm sure that they have like some experience with playing on Curious Minds and know just some of the general good deals. Like I think you were talking about, the high ground ramp to the natural can sometimes mean you want to go for those low ground expansions a little bit faster. Doesn't look like either one of these players are going for the pylon block or anything just yet, but it's always things like that that keep in mind. And that's the reason why both these players are starting up a Zealot. In case there is a pylon block, you could just go quickly kill that. And if you end up not pylon blocking, you just cancel the Zealot.
Exactly, absolutely exactly. Like this was the go-to style of last patch, especially, and it started becoming the style on low ground expo maps where you didn't have this ramp going up to it as well, which was super crazy. But here, both of them got the Zealot out, both of them going for the Stargate. This is already kind of cool, and both of them get to see exactly what the other one's doing with it as well. So neither player with a supreme advantage at all. Totally textbook mirror here.
Yeah, it's complete mirror, similar to how game number 1 was, but I think the cool difference here is that there is a little bit more tech coming out earlier. Now that one of them have just gone straight up to the Nexus quite as quickly, and Goblin's going to be the first one to throw down that Nexus because, oh, sorry, actually, no, ShoWTimE already threw down his Nexus. I was like, Goblin building up those minerals, but no, ShoWTimE already threw his down. So yeah, it's going to be a mirror, but both these players will have the Stargates out a little bit faster, so they can be in each other's faces a little sooner. And I'm also really curious with both of them knowing there's a Stargate. Yeah, are they both going to go Phoenix? And the answer is yes. Oh boy, Ben. Oh boy.
So there's a few things here. Goblin didn't get to scout what was being made in the Stargate of ShoWTimE, whereas ShoWTimE, he like suicided that probe and built a pylon because it was going to die and not see what was getting made. So ShoWTimE knows exactly what he's going to be up against here. And that is a little advantage that he has. And Goblin, he's kind of just playing in the dark here with his Phoenix.
Ooh, interesting decision for ShoWTimE to just go straight across the map with this Phoenix, because there's a world where that could end poorly, where the Stalker gets a single shot off on the Phoenix of ShoWTimE, and then Goblin's Phoenix just chases the Phoenix down or something, but looks like he'll get out of there safely. Ends up being okay. This is the trick about Phoenix Wars in PvP. It's really, really difficult to get out of Phoenix once the war begins. Once you start escalating this into more and more Phoenix, the first person who transitions out, if you're down like a couple of Phoenix, you don't lose the fight by like 3 Phoenix. You lose the fight by like 8 Phoenix. It's extremely snowbally with how these fights work. So it becomes really difficult to find the time or opportunity to actually transition out to different tech. And well, we're going to see Goblin already trying to get up a Twilight Council. He's been adding on a few more Stalkers here and there, but ShoWTimE is doubling down on the Stargate play.
Yeah, yeah, they're both like when they both were moving out with the Phoenix counts, I was like, man, this is crazy because ShoWTimE could have potentially got kind of pounced on there. There was a couple of stalkers and the Phoenix and what have you, but ShoWTimE does have the slightly quicker Phoenix production. And as you said as well, getting that second Stargate as well, that's a big deal because Goblin, he can't take, if he loses a fight here and he loses his Phoenix, that's it, game over because you can't come back from that. He has to be so damn careful.
Yeah, I am kind of worried for Goblin because not just with the double Stargate Phoenix coming out now, because now double Stargate Phoenix production is going to begin, but he's already just been down a single Phoenix, and even just being down one Phoenix means you can lose the fight and your opponent will still have 2 or 3 Phoenix left over, so it just gets worse and worse. So the fact that Goblin has been investing in all this other stuff really showcases that he is trying to just not lose too many Phoenix during all this, but I think that ShoWTimE has identified, okay, yeah, I am heavily winning the Phoenix war now. So the question is, yeah, ShoWTimE already realized, he's like, yep, let me start up a robo. Like, you're clearly not just making Phoenix, you're doing something else.
I mean, that scout, that timing by ShoWTimE, it was fortunate, but also he knew where the weakness was. Gets to scout the Dark Shrine, but maybe more importantly, or just as importantly, gets the Phoenix as well. And now Goblin, I saw him smile as well. He realized that was the worst thing that could possibly happen to him. And yeah, as soon as that was seen, ShoWTimE starts up his robo. It's in a nice, safe space in his main base. Goblin does have a pylon near that third, but holy crap, he is hoping at this point for something to go very, very right for him.
Yeah, to be entirely frank, this is now ShoWTimE's game to lose. The Phoenix count is absolutely ridiculous at this point for ShoWTimE, and going for the transition from Phoenix into the DTs means that Goblin doesn't really have a whole lot of other tech to bank his hopes on. So he will lose workers, he will lose the Phoenix battle. He needs to equalize with the DTs in some way, shape, or form, but well, I actually do like this. I mean, if you know your opponent's Phoenix are on your side of the map, why not go do some equalizing damage with your own? Well, I guess this is why.
I mean, it was a nice catch, but the DTs are caught at the natural by ShoWTimE as well. They were blocked off, couldn't get in. Observer was there as well, shield batteries added. And look at this, those poor Phoenix. I mean, he's going to get out with most of them, in fact, all of them. That was about the best thing that Goblin could do with this situation. Because otherwise, I don't think he's getting anything done with them.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate to say, but that was really impressive, even though he's still in a losing situation, because he did the best thing possible given a losing situation. Because ShoWTimE is just not giving him any opportunities anymore. So more workers are going to go down. Goblin actually can't do anything about it except continue to try to do this. But now Recall's going to be on cooldown, so I don't know what the escape plan is here for these Phoenix.
Goblin's actually doing really well with this, man. Like like his army, it's got Archon, it's gonna have Blink as well and stuff. Like ShoWTimE is still, as you said, in much better shape. He's traded twice as efficiently, but the probe count that's happened, that's gone here, that was 5 Phoenix doing kind of the same work as 14, which when you think about it, yeah, just well done by Goblin. And unfortunately now they are caught out, and that's going to be the end of Goblin being able to do any sort of counter damage, I do believe here. And yeah, this is where life gets super hard for Goblin now.
Yeah, Goblin's army is going to be 2 Archons and 7 Stalkers. The Archons are going to be definitely helpful because Phoenix, frankly, can't do a single thing about it. And that's going to be a good use of those DTs. But the problem is the Archons are not exactly super mobile units. And even just kind of clumsily stumbling over their own buildings is going to cause problems in them, helping defend the mineral lines. I almost wonder, Ben, I'm curious if you have thoughts on this. Like, at what point do you just kind of say as ShoWTimE, I have so many Phoenix that even if you have 5 or 6 Stalkers, whatever. I know that I've won the Phoenix War already at this point. I'm just going to go for ham, go for broke on your mineral lines.
I think so. He doesn't need to be crazy because there's always going to be a moment where you can take damage or do damage and just, run away, regen shields and whatever. Like, these Phoenix will always be useful. And the longer this game goes on, as long as ShoWTimE knows that he's in an economically good situation, the Protoss has to keep expanding, which grants you another point of access. And as long as these Phoenix just stay on the map, that's just really bad for Goblin. And you're seeing ShoWTimE use them very nicely here.
Yeah, definitely finding a few workers here and there. Goblin able to at least snipe off one of the Phoenix. And there's not exactly more Phoenix being produced here for ShoWTimE. he is getting his own transition points set out, since you can't just win the game off of the Phoenix. But, well, Goblin is going to go for his own attack, trying to time this out with charge, which is nearing completion, but isn't quite there. The Phoenix going to, actually, they have quite a bit of energy left over, so they are going to go after a few probes, then get recalled back to help out with the fight. So many Archons does mean those Phoenix are going to have a hard time not taking massive amounts of splash damage. So this is Goblin's best attempt.
I tell you what, it's a scary army that he's got as well, because ShoWTimE's kind of like just one right click on the floor away from losing all those Phoenix to some of this Archon splash. But ShoWTimE's just so good at buying time, man. He really is. It's what he does so well in these PvPs, it seems. And you see this? More shield batteries. He's getting more Archons of his own. And his army, it's a scary one that he has as well.
Yeah, very few units pair as well with the shield battery as an Archon. And if it's an Archon versus Archon war, I think the defender is going to be quite thrilled that they have the advantage of all these shield batteries around. You can see Goblin trying to cut out of the range of some of those shield batteries. Phoenix now going for broke on top of some of the Stalkers over the Archon, so they do take quite a bit of damage here, but you can see that ShoWTimE is starting to overwhelm Goblin. The supply is starting to lead in his favor. And even with some of the Phoenix being cleaned up, that was Goblin's all-in. This was his big chance to try and make something happen, and ShoWTimE, the wall, manages to deflect them.
Certainly does. And look at these Archons getting warped in here, and it's like, oh no, they can't save those little Zealots from just kind of twiddling their legs in the sky. And this looks like it's going to be it, the end of Goblin in this series. But he put up one hell of a fight. GG ShoWTimE, and